Yeah, so where this suggestion of increasing council tax has come from, Martin, has come from the latest financial report, which have been happening, monthly since, of course, that bankruptcy at the council was declared back in September. The latest one, which we had a few days ago, was endorsed by the council with its recommendations today, and of course applying to the Department for Levelling Up for Housing and Communities, applying to the Secretary of State Michael Gove for, of course, that permission to raise council tax in next year's budget above what is usually allowed as a maximum increase at a single time of 4.99%. They're going to write requesting for that permission. Of course, with previous bankrupt councils, we've seen how in some cases they've risen the council tax by 10 or even 15%. As you mentioned, that is really going to hit the residents hardest. But just, for people that don't necessarily know particularly what's gone on here at the council and why this council is in such a financial mess, let's just kind of take a look at some figures. So, of course, back in June we had that equal pay liability of £800 million that was found by an IT system itself £100 million over budget. Now, that equal pay liability dates back to a Supreme Court ruling back in 2012, where it was found the council were not typically paying the same bonuses to the more female-dominated areas of the public sector as they were the more male-dominated areas of the public sector. So the unions are still pushing for that equal pay liability. There was a deal on the table to try and settle that, but that fell through, of course, in the lead-up to all of that bankruptcy. Now, the forecasted budget deficit for next year, 2024-2025, is in the region of £165.1 million. That then was going to go up to £177 million in 2025-2026. But the government commissioners who have been in at this council overseeing everything as they try to come back from this bankruptcy have set a deadline of the 7th of January for this council to find £300 million worth of savings over the next 2 years. And so that's where this recommendation, the latest financial report, essentially comes from. They say they've managed to find £150 million worth of savings so far for next year's budget. However, of course, that's still short of what they're saying they currently need. And of course, it's only halfway to that £300 million. And so that's why they've recommended that they go to the government to try and, of course, increase council tax, to try and also capitalise on some of their revenue. And that essentially means get permission for capitalisation direction, which means essentially being allowed to sell off some of their assets and also borrow to try and, of course, cover their deficits, but also that equal pay liability as well. So that plan was endorsed by the Cabinet today. They are going to fill in those letters and write to the Secretary of State Michael Gove asking for permission. And speaking afterwards, giving me his reaction to that meeting, Councillor Robert Oldham, who's the leader of the Birmingham Conservatives here, gave me his reaction.
But the Labour administration here in Birmingham has had to admit the unprecedented situation it's got itself into. We've got negative reserves here in Birmingham of minus 678 million. Labour are looking to make 300 million worth of savings over the next 2 years from their budget. And today they've admitted they're going to look to set a deficit budget next year. That means they're going to look to capitalise the expenditure from next year's budget instead of making savings to balance the budget. To put it into context, how you might think about it at home, it's like taking out a loan to pay off your mortgage. This is not a way to sustainably run a business.
Yeah, now, John Codden, who's of course the leader of the council, says that they are focused on the work. They know about the difficult job that they've got in front of them, but they say they are trying to be transparent throughout all of this process, and of course will engage in public consultations when it comes to deciding which of these council's assets they do decide they need to sell off to raise that revenue.
OK, Jack Carson, thank you. Excellent update.